10, mic check, mic check, mic check. General manager, press conference, pre-draft. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. Paul Dottino's in the building. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. 1, 2, 3. How we going? How do we sound? 1, 2, 3. Okay. Swen, can you check the control room? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
Front row guy? No? Everybody good? I'm waiting for Pat. This is formal? Yeah. Owners meeting. First thing I want to do, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention, or thank, I should say, the coaching staff, our scouting staff, community relations, our sports science, our strength coaches, our trainers. Throughout this draft process, whether it was, the combine medical, the film evaluations by the coaches, traveling to pro days, these 30 visits we've had, it's been all hands on deck for the entire organization, the meal room, the cafeteria, you name it. Everybody throughout the organization's done a phenomenal job through this process. My first exposure to a lot of the people on the team, and it's been nothing but great so far. And looking forward to getting to the draft a week from tomorrow, and I think a lot of the hard work will pay off. So with that being said, I'll open up for any questions.
There's always the philosophy, best player available, and then there's filling a need. How do you approach this whole thing?
I think where we are, our roster, I think there's several needs to put a finger on exactly what the biggest need is. Would be difficult. So I think if you can find two really good football players at 5 and 7, that's how we've stacked the board. Like, let's just throw whatever perceived need it is out. Who are the best football players in this draft? And we've set a vertical board and we have a horizontal board as well. So we're still working through that. It's not completely set. There's some conversations still to be had, but I don't think you can go wrong with drafting good football players.
Joe, you said that you had wanted to identify 7 players for 7 spots. How close to doing that are you at this point?
We're close. We're going to get with the coaches. I know Dave's mentioned that earlier. The scouts just left on Tuesday, so we'd had some meetings with them. We kind of set the board how we saw things, and we met with the coaches and got their rankings and how they see things. So there's a few players where we're going to shut the door and lock it and have knockout dragouts, and when we come out, we're going to make the best decision for the Giants. But there's not a lot of players that there's a big separation in terms of how we see them. So do I have 7 right now? Yeah, as a personnel staff, we actually did like a 1 through 100 vertically, as an exercise. But we're going to get with the coaches and just make sure that we're on board with not just 7. If there's a move back scenario, whatever that is, do we have 10, 15, 20 players that we like, and make sure we get them in the right order as football players.
Joe, you're in a unique spot having 2 top 10 picks separated by 1 pick. I mean, how much of this process are you trying to figure out what Carolina might do? Does that factor in how you might order your picks? Yeah, I've thought about that several times. What are they doing? Trying to figure out what position they might go, because that will make a difference in what you do. If you're sitting there at 5 and there's somebody you really like, and there's 2 other players that maybe at the same position that you like as well, or just 2 players in general that you're happy with, regardless of position, that can also factor into who you take at number 5. So yeah, if you got a crystal ball, I'd love to see it, but we're going through several of those scenarios, who may be there, if they are, how we're going to go through and make the pick and what we're going to do.
Joe, you mentioned, I think in an interview with the team's website, that you'd like to get as many at-bats as possible. Roster building is never really a one-year thing, but are you approaching it this year as a one-year thing, or are you maybe looking to get some at-bats for down the line?
Yeah, both. I'd be open to both. Again, I said it in my introductory press conference, we still want to compete today and build for tomorrow. So, playing both sides of that, if it's picks this year or picks into the future, again, those are cost-controlled assets, that young players that, could really help us set the foundation here. So I'd be open to either or.
Joe, the offensive tackle group coming out, everybody talks about Neal and Aquano. But how about Charles Cross in Mississippi State? Should he be in that conversation with those 2? And do you project him as like a top 10 pick in this draft?
Want me to give you our board? Yeah, I'm not going to talk about any specifics or something. Charles is a really good player, really good feet. We like him. Whether he should be up in that group or not, that's for everybody to decide. We'll see how it falls on draft night, and then over time we'll see how it plays out. But all 3 of those players that you mentioned are talented and good players, and they're great kids, and I think they all have bright futures.
Joe, as I'm sure you know, though, offensive line here has been like an unsolvable Rubik's Cube for years now. How committed are you and your staff to leading the draft, believing you can put a capable, perhaps even occasionally dominant offensive line on the field starting in September?
Yeah, I think Dave said it earlier too. Like, the offensive line's important, and there's several other positions that are important for us to go compete. And I understand, again, I wasn't here in the past. I'm not sure exactly, everything that went on. I'm privy to, recently, where the offensive line was, and we tried through free agency with the resources we have to upgrade the offensive line the best we can, and that'll continue through the draft. And again, if you want to build it up both sides of the ball, build it up front, offensive line, that's very important. And to get our best version of Saquon, Daniel, the entire offense, that, to your point, that's going to be very important, to get that right, whether it's running the ball or pass protection. So, that will definitely be a priority. You know, if it's just the need, the value, where that is, like you just got to make sure it mirrors up, or you're going to be in the same boat. You know, if you try to force it and it's not the right value, then we're sitting up here next year saying the same thing. Well, yeah, we needed a guard, so we reached for him, but the value wasn't right. So you got to make sure when those two, you know, meet and they mirror each other, then that's when you're going to make the best decisions.
You talked about the possibility of like trading back. How do you balance, you know, if there's a guy on the board that you really love versus you got a really good trade offer, like those two options on the table?
Yeah, I've been there before. Like you get greedy and you're like, let's move back, and then that guy's gone. You know, are you gonna sleep better at night knowing you got an extra 6th round pick and you move back 4 spots, but you lose the guy you want, or let's just take the guy and not be greedy? So you play through all those situations. You know, again, that's why sometimes I'll do a vertical board, just how many players are available, who do we like, if we move back X amount of spots, are we going to get one of these 5 guys? Yes, then it makes sense, and you get an extra pick. So it's not something I have to do, but we'll take phone calls, we'll listen, you know, we'll analyze it, and then, you know, we'll call the team back if they're calling and let them know if we'll do it or not.
Joe, there's a chance you go into this draft and you get the #1 cornerback in this draft, depending on, you know, because you're drafting so high. I would think your approach and your whole operations approach is different whether James Bradberry is on the depth chart or he's not on the depth chart, you know, because it's a #1 cornerback either here or not here. Do you think he can be here? And if he's not, how much does that affect how you go into the draft?
So what's your question's more about James, not?
Well, it's about both. I mean, if James, you know, if you think James is...
There's going to be a #1 corner there at 5?
Yeah.
Okay. You got the crystal ball. We'll see. I don't know. Yeah, again, I don't know who the #1, 2, you know, we'll figure that out. But, yeah, I've had great conversations with James Bradberry's representatives. I've talked to James. He can still play in this league. He's still starting corner. You know, we've talked. You know, he wasn't here today, but... You know, again, yes, there are contingency plans, which I mentioned at the combine and I mentioned at the owners meetings, where, you know, he can still be a New York Giant.
Joe,
Are you still getting calls?
We've gotten calls on James Bradberry. Yeah, we have gotten calls on James Bradberry.
Joe, when you approach this draft, I mean, it's kind of been said that you don't have a lot of salary cap space. You need about $12 million or so, roughly. That's what's been reported. Mm-hmm. How does that influence what you may or may not do as far as trading, moving around, and just, you know, how you just approach everything? Or do you not let that affect you?
Yeah, not in this draft. I mean, we're contingency plan. So if we stay at every pick, okay, this is what it's going to cost us. If we do move back, there is a cost savings to doing that, but that's not going to drive our decision. We're not going to pass up on a good player, you know, especially in the draft for a cost savings. You know, that's not going to be the genesis of that decision.
Joe, another back question. You said like restructuring was sort of last resort. You did the Adoree one. I'm just curious the timing. Why do it when you did it?
Yeah, you know, the public websites that they have out there, so there's some things when you're dealing with the salary cap that they don't necessarily bake in when they're doing that stuff. So there were some things that occurred, and we had to convert at that time.
Building your contingency plans, how soon in the I know this is your first year, but just based on your experience in Buffalo, how soon before the draft do you start talking about trade value and potential trade up and trade down scenarios with other teams?
Yeah, I'm head down in meetings with coaches, scouts, and everything. So haven't really come up for air to start thinking about that. Hey, does it make sense for us to move back, move up? We're just trying to, right now, we're planning as if, hey, we got 5 and 7, and, you know, the rest of our picks, the second, the 2/3, etc. We have received calls on, you know, both picks. But again, it's too early. We're still working through our process. It's more, hey, well, let's stay in contact as the draft gets closer. You know, again, we'll go through those scenarios, but it's too early right now to make any type of decision like that.
Joe, is there any advantage, do you think, to being an unknown quantity here? You know, you don't have a track record, you don't have, you know, a history, a litany. Nobody probably knows what you're thinking. Is there any advantage to that?
Yeah, there could be, but I think where the picks are, I'm not sure that's going to play in as much. It's the 5th and 7th pick, so you know, again, I just know we're going to get 2 good players, and you know, there's enough needs that we have that, you know, whether I had a track record or not, you know, I think where we're going to go, you know, I don't think anybody really have a good sense of that.
When they hired you, you said you had a pretty good idea of the first 4 rounds.
Mm-hmm.
The first 4 rounds. Has that changed a lot since you've been here?
Oh yeah. Myself and probably 4 or 5 others have seen the entire board. So between myself, Brandon Brown, Tim McDonald, Chris Pettit, we've seen the entire board. We had a couple national scouts that have seen quite a bit of the board too. So when we have those conversations, if you're talking about, a receiver at USC and a receiver at Tennessee, you've got multiple looks on those guys that can have those conversations. If it's just an area scout that's seen somebody at USC and an area scout at Tennessee, they can't really enter into that conversation because they haven't seen them both. So, multiple looks along with the coaches on, the entire draft board. Again, that's part of our process, that we believe in, and that'll help us lead to the best decisions.
Joe, you said you received offer or a call about the pick. Have you received any offers for the 5 and 7?
Not a hard offer. No, we haven't gotten into negotiations. Just some teams call and say, "Hey, would you be willing to move?" And that's kind of where it is right now. And my comment was, as the draft gets closer, we can talk more if there's any specifics if you're serious about doing it. I think some teams are just fishing around.
When you table those discussions, and possibly if they do reach back out to you, does the parameters around that possible or just the spitballing things change, or do they come back with a new price? What is the philosophy there?
Well, it's a situation where I'm perfectly fine at 5 and 7. So if it makes sense and it's something that blows your doors off, then you think about it. If somebody offers something, nobody's offered anything hard offer right now, and to me it really wouldn't make sense right now to do anything again unless it blew the doors off of us. There's like something you can't turn down. So I think a lot of it right now you'll see, same as me, people are starting to come out of meetings and stepping back, meeting with their coaches, and now you get into kind of the planning part of it. Okay, if it's a team behind us and they want to move up, how can we get there? Who can we call? So just some exploratory calls is typically what will happen now. By Monday, you'll find out a little bit more who's serious. Y'all may figure out before me, who's Jacksonville going to take, who's Detroit, all those rumors. It'll pick up steam next week, I think, and there'll be more serious conversations if there are teams that are, legit serious thinking about coming up.
Joe, from an evaluation standpoint, for you personally, you obviously have a scouting background going all the way back to your days as a scout. What's the biggest lesson that you take into this process of scouting guys that maybe you may have made a mistake, or maybe you were wrong on a guy? Is there something philosophically that you look at and you say, you know what, this is why I believe what I believe?
Yeah, absolutely. You're always, I call it the autopsy report. After you make a decision, you look back and why did it work? Why didn't it work? And over 21 years of doing this, you got a Rolodex of players and situations that have occurred that you can reflect on and learn from. So, to me, the biggest thing is the collaboration between the coaching staff and the personnel staff, because it doesn't make sense to draft a guy if the coaches want no part of him, because they're dead on arrival. As soon as that guy. If they're worried about his hands, he drops the ball. They're up in my office. Told you he couldn't catch. I told you, he couldn't do it. So, and again, there's a little bit of, how should I say it? Just trying to get the coaches on the same page. Whatever it is. Like we joke around about being lawyers. Like we're going to present our case to the coaches. We got to figure out how to get them to where we want them. So if there's somebody we really like, there's a roundabout way to maybe get them to see it how we see it, or. Again, so to me, the collaboration, and it's been outstanding between Dabes and his staff. They've been busting their butt. They've been at pro days. We've had 30 visits. These guys coming through here. We got 6 guys in the building today that they're meeting with. So they've been phenomenal. So the collaboration, and I think when the coaching staff and the personnel staff are on the same page on a player, I typically think those are the best decisions.
Joe, you mentioned earlier that there were contingency plans where James Bradberry could still be with the Giants.
Mm-hmm.
How, for lack of a better word, difficult are those contingency plans to enact to keep someone with his cap number here? And also, why don't you need to know that before the draft? Like, it would seem to be, if you do have to make a move with him, a big hole to fill once the draft is already complete.
Yeah, I mean, that's a tough part about this job, because you know what? Like, James Bradberry is a great person, like, good player. He is. Like, I know the 2 people very well that were in Carolina that drafted him. Brandon Beane and Sean McDermott, they were there, and he's a player we had talked about. So, I like the kid. I like the skill set. It's just the situation we're in from a financial standpoint. It is what it is. But there are ways that, we can still make it work, and James can be here. So, if people say, why don't you cut him or trade him or whatever, then there's a huge void. And we're going to play it out and see how the draft goes and see what the roster looks like. And there's still contingency plans where we can keep James on the roster.
Would you say he's a great person, but it's obviously kind of a cold hard business? Do you have to take into account how the locker room might perceive it? If, let's say, you keep him longer, and then cut him and puts him in a tougher spot, does that weigh into your decision at all, or is it strictly?
Yeah, you're always taking that into decision. Yeah, that's part of the process too. You know, you think about all that things, but you know, at the end of the day, you got to do what's best for the New York Giants, and he's still a player that can play at a high level and is a starting corner in the league.
So you'd be open to reworking his contract?
What's that?
You'd be open to reworking the contract to lessen the cap hit? I know it's tough because
I'm not going to get into
it's the
details,
last
but
year of the deal,
we've got
so-
contingency plans. I won't get into details, but we've got contingency
Joe,
plans.
Joe, how do you
what is
see-
your sense or intuition on, you know how the deal goes in these drafts with quarterbacks, right?
Mhm.
Nobody likes them and then everybody likes them, right? You know, you get a sense that at 5 and 7, the only teams who are interested in quarterbacks that, you know, that kind of makes this whole thing go when they really want quarterbacks. You know, do you get a sense of how strong the market is and, you know, what teams are thinking about these guys?
Yeah, not yet. I'm guessing that'll pick up steam, but you know, right now I haven't. I mean, you call around and you ask, nobody's really showed their hands on the quarterbacks. I mean, they really haven't. You know, we know what teams have been where. We know what, you know, again, a lot of where these kids have went on visits and private workouts, and we track a lot of that stuff. But really haven't heard a lot on, you know, what teams are high on which quarterbacks. There hasn't been a lot of that.
Joe, you said you still want to compete today and build for tomorrow. So how important are these 2 first-round picks for today and for tomorrow for this franchise?
Yeah, very important, integral. You know, I mean, for Brian and I, it's our first 2 picks as, you know, New York Giant head coach and general manager. So in terms of foundational pieces, in terms of being good players and the type of people we want, it's very important.
Joe, generally speaking, how do you view a 3rd-round pick? Should you get like a multi-year starter? Is that a place?
Yeah, I don't want to put any pressure on a guy like that. I mean,
I'm just,
again, there's the hit rate at 3rd round is, you know, I mean, there's a margin for error. Shoot, there's a margin for error across the draft. So I don't want to. I've had guys that, you know, come in and play and they have good careers. You know, some guys are backups, they're contributors, special teams. You know, I mean, like, yeah, ideally they all turn into starters, but you know, I don't want to put a playtime percentage or anything
yeah,
like that.
just like I asked because it's been a spot where the Giants have not gotten much out of the 3rd round since Justin Tuck in 2005, which is a very long time ago.
Yeah.
I was just curious, having been a scout, what you value the 3rd round as, of starters or?
Yeah, I mean, again, ideally they all turn into starters. You'd prefer that. Just looking over the past couple years, I mean, we had some guys in, you know, where I've been in the past. It's taken them some time to develop, but they turn into good players. You know, some guys, you know, we took a couple running backs in Buffalo. They split time. But again, sometimes it's based on the situation, injury, you know, what the success. Yeah, so I don't want to say, yeah, this guy's going to be a starter, and then you guys crush me 2 years from now.
As the man with final say, do you feel the weight of responsibility?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, it's.
Your first time in this position, obviously.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I want to get it right.
Joe, last time we spoke to you, you said you were still feeling out what Don Martindale wanted from a player standpoint in his defense. What traits do you think you're looking for, and what have you learned about the types of players and skills that he's looking for?
Yeah, I'll give Wink a lot of credit. Like he's very open-minded. You know, he likes players with versatility. You know, he doesn't necessarily have size, length parameters, but when we watched some Baltimore, you know, film, you could just see how much he values versatility and where he can play players and how he can put them in their best position to succeed. So he's been really good, really clear, really defined in terms of, you know, what he's looking for. But you know, the versatility piece is, you know, one of the things that I really appreciate from watching the Baltimore stuff with him, and you know, some of the stuff we're looking for.
How much of your first few months on this job has been about not only evaluating players and stuff, but evaluating the scouting staff and front office and guys that are doing the draft evaluations? Because these are guys that you haven't really worked with before, obviously.
Yeah, absolutely. It's part of it. I mean, we're in meetings and, you know, just going through players, whether it's reading reports or, you know, how we do interviews at the Senior Bowl or how we do interviews at the Combine, you know, the information we're getting back from pro days to, you know, just having a couple weeks of meetings. You know, you're always evaluating everybody, and some of it's just, you know, maybe we're going to do things a little bit different in terms of our process, and you know, who's going to buy in, who's going to excel, who's all hands on deck, and you know, who's adapted. And you know, the staff's done a great job with that, and there's a lot of good people in this building, and that have done a really good job over the last, you know, 3 months that I've been here.
Joe, what was the biggest lesson you learned watching Brandon go through this process?
Oh, Brandon, through this process. That's a good question. To me, it's a little bit of what I was talking about earlier with the coaches. Maybe you don't see eye to eye, you know, how to navigate that. consensus build, get people on the same page if there is a different discrepancy between personnel and the coaching. And then, I was fortunate I was in a lot of meetings and dealing with ownership. That's not something you do when you're an area scout or a national scout or whatever. So, my interaction, being in those meetings with Brandon and, the Pagulas, that's something I would have never learned along the road if I wasn't with Brandon. So that was very valuable.
How much do you factor in, quote unquote, like character concerns? Is there some stuff that's like non-negotiable? Does it hurt? Like, how do you just weigh that? If there's something there, I'm sure you do a lot of homework on guys to get comfortable. I'm just curious, like, how you weigh that into your evaluation.
Yeah, it weighs heavy. It weighs heavy. So if it's a guy that we don't think fits from a character standpoint, we'll just take him off the board. And just if he goes on and has a really good career somewhere else, that's fine. We just got to get it right for what we want in our building.
What about in terms of durability and like guys who have an injury history?
Yeah, we just had our medical meeting Monday night, with the medical staff. They've done a great job, at the combine, working through all these guys. And then some of the players that weren't at Indianapolis, they weren't combine guys, getting that information too. So, that we take that all into account. And, they're the doctors and the medical folks. So, we lean on them on, what the recommendations are, in terms of taking or not taking a player.
Joe, did you have a like a draft day routine your last couple of
I used to golf when there was less pressure.
Obviously, what do you think it's going to be like next Thursday?
Probably long. Yeah, probably a long day. Yeah, I'll probably get up and just come in here. And I'm in a temporary apartment right now, so I'm probably not going to sit there. Probably too anxious to golf. So yeah, and I'll probably come in, get a workout in, make some phone calls. Again, call around the league. Call our general managers, see if you can get any information on what's going on in front of you, and again, probably take some calls if people are calling and looking to move up. So yeah, it'll be exciting. It's something you dream about, and for it to that day to finally be here, it'll be really cool.
Do you think there'll be a lot of outgoing calls?
Yeah, I'll be calling to try to get information. Those be the outgoing calls.
Joe, when you look at this draft, do you sit in your mind and say, if I take 5 and 7, I know in my mind I'm going to get 2 surefire starters?
You would like to think that. I'm not going to label these guys are going to be surefire starters. There's so many, there's so much that goes into it. Again, I'm not perfect. You're evaluating an imperfect human being, and again, I don't want to put anybody under that type of pressure. But yeah, we're going to get 2 guys that we think fit, from a character standpoint, from an athletic standpoint, as a football player, and it's going to mirror up to what we're looking for. So I'm confident we'll find somebody that checks all those boxes.
Is the depth of this draft, though, enough where there will be a lot of starters?
Yeah, I really can't answer that. It's a good draft. There's depth in the draft. Again, there is depth throughout the draft. Late into the first, second, third. I do think it's a good draft, and that's my job and our staff's job to identify those players. 4th, 5th as well. And on.
So when you came here, you mentioned how there's a reason why these jobs are open. You get the roster, you get you don't have the Pro Bowl players and coaches, things like that. Is one of the things that really was good about this job is what you have as far as capital in this draft? Very rarely you come in and say you got 5 and 7, go.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, having 2 top 10 picks, that's definitely a good way to set the foundation and get 2 really good players, early on. And again, you're not sitting at 15 or 20 and trying to figure out who's going to be there. So the fact that you can, we can list 7 players and know that we're going to get 2 of them, makes it a little bit easier. But yeah, that was definitely an attractive part of the job.
You look at 36 like that, sort of, as well?
Yeah, and the good thing about 36 is you get all day Friday to, hey, we're the 4th pick, in the 2nd round. So same deal. You can do another vertical stack. Hey, we know we're going to get one of these 4. If there's 10 you like, well, shoot, maybe somebody calls, you can move back and get another pick, and you're going to get one of those guys. So all that stuff will go into play.
Hey, Joe, is it concerning to you that Kadarius Toney is not here, has not reported yet, doesn't have the playbook? It's
voluntary. Everybody, nobody's asked about the other guys that aren't here. It's life. Life happens. And I've had good conversation with Kadarius, and we've been in contact, and at the end of the day, it's voluntary, but that's what it is.
All right, Joe. Thank you.
All right, thanks.